car crash while hitchhiking. Dennis Johnson, born 1949, was born in Munich, Germany, and raised in Tokyo, Manila, and Washington. He published his first book, The Incognito Lounge and Other Poems, in 1982, and followed it with four novels before publishing the volume of short fiction, Jesus' Son, in 1992. That was heralded as a landmark in drug literature by an American author. Car Crash While Hitchhiking is a story from that collection. Johnson told interviewer Andrea Clark for an article in the San Francisco Reader that he was straight when he wrote Jesus' Son. I didn't write it under the influence. I don't know how you can. I mean, your hands get real big. How could you type? Johnson recalled that. What's funny about Jesus' Son is that I never even wrote that book. I just wrote it down. I would tell these stories apropos of nothing about when I was drinking and using, and people would say, you should write that down. I was probably 35 when I wrote the first story. The voice is kind of a mix in that it was a young voice, but it also someone who's looking back. I like that kind of double vision. So I worked on them once in a while. Then I started using stories I heard other people tell, and then I started making some up. Pretty soon it was fiction. When I just forgot about it, I thought, I'm not going to parade my defects, my history of being a spiritual cripple, out in front of other people. But once in a while, I'd write a little more. I would just hear the story, voices. Johnson's writing had appeared in the Paris Review, the New Yorker, and McSweeney's, in addition to poetry and fiction. He has also written plays for Camp Santo, a San Francisco theater company. He told Clark, if you write fiction, you're by yourself. There are certain advantages to that, in that you don't have to explain anything to anybody. But when you get in with others who share the loneliness of the whole enterprise, you're not alone anymore. Car Crash While Hitchhiking by Dennis Johnson. A salesman who shared his liquor steering while sleeping. A Cherokee filled with bourbon. A VW no more than a bubble of hashish fumes. Captioned by a college student. And a family from Marshalltown who headed on and killed forever a man driving west out of Bethany, Missouri. I rose up, sopping wet from sleeping under the pouring rain, and something less than conscious, thanks to the first three of the people I've already named, the salesman and the Indian and the student, all of whom had given me drugs. At the head of the entrance ramp, I waited without hope of a ride. What was the point, even of rolling up my sleeping bag, when I was too wet to be let into anybody's car? I draped it around me like a rope cape. The downpour raked the asphalt and gurgled in the ruts. My thoughts zoomed pitifully. The traveling salesman had fed me pills that made the linings of my veins feel scraped out. My jaw ached. I knew every raindrop by its name. I sensed everything before it happened. I knew a certain Oldsmobile would stop for me even before it slowed, and by the sweet voices of the family inside it, I knew we'd have an accident in the storm. I didn't care. They said they'd take me all the way. The man and the wife took the little girl up front with them and left the baby in back with me and my dripping bedroll. I'm not taking you anywhere very fast, the man said. I've got a wife and babies here, that's why. You are the ones, I thought, and I piled my sleeping bag against the left-hand door and slept across it, not caring whether I lived or died. The baby slept free on the seat beside me. He was about 9 months old. But before any of this, that afternoon, the salesman and I swept down into Kansas City in his luxury car. He developed a dangerous, cynical camaraderie, beginning in Texas, where he'd taken me on. We ate up his bottle of amphetamines, and every so often we pulled off the interstate and bought another pint of Canadian Club and a sack of ice. His car had cylindrical glass holders attached to either door and a white leathery interior. He said he'd take me home to stay overnight with his family, but first he wanted to stop and see a woman he knew. Under Midwestern clouds like great gray brains, we left the superhighway with a drifting sensation and entering Kansas City's rush hour with a sensation of running aground. As soon as we slowed down, all the magic of traveling together burned away. He went on and on about his girlfriend. I like this girl. I think I love this girl. But I've got 2 kids and a wife, and there's certain obligations there. And on top of everything else, I love my wife. I'm gifted with love. I love my kids. I love my relatives. As we kept on, I felt jilted and sad. I have a boat. I love a little 16-footer. I have 2 cars. There's room in my backyard for a swimming pool. He found his girlfriend at work. She ran a furniture store, and I lost him there. The clouds stayed the same until night. Then, in the dark, I didn't see the storm gathering. The driver of the Volkswagen, a college man, the one who stoked my head with all the hish-hash, let me out beyond the city limits just as it began to rain. Never mind the speed I'd been taking. I was too overcome to stand up. I lay out in the grass off the exit ramp and woke in the middle of a puddle that had filled up around me. And later, as I've said, I slept in the back seat while the Oldsmobile, the family from Marshalltown, splashed along through the rain, and yet I dreamed I was looking right through my eyelids, and my pulse marked off the seconds of time. The interstate through western Missouri was, in that era, nothing more than a two-way road, most of it. When a semi-truck came toward us and passed going the other way, we were lost in a blinding spray and a warfare of noises, such as you get being towed through an automatic car wash. The wipers stood up and laid down across the windshield without much effect. I was exhausted, and after an hour I slept more deeply. I'd known all along exactly what was going to happen, but the man and his wife woke me up later, denying it vexatiously. "Oh, no! No!" I was thrown against the back of their seat so hard that it broke. I commenced bouncing back and forth. A liquid, which I knew right away was human blood, flew around the car and drained down on my head. When it was over, I was in the back seat again, just as I had been. I rose up and looked around. Our headlights had gone out. The radiator was hissing steadily. Beyond that, I didn't hear a thing. As far as I could tell, I was the only one conscious. As my eyes adjusted, I saw the baby was lying on its back beside me, as if nothing had happened. Its eyes were open, and I was feeling its cheeks with his little hands. In a minute the driver, who'd been slumped over the wheel, sat up and peered at us. His face was smashed and dark with blood. It made my teeth hurt to look at him. But when he spoke, he didn't sound as if any of his teeth were broken. "What happened?" "We had a wreck," he said. "The baby's okay?" I said, although I had no idea how the baby was. He turned to his wife. "Janice," he said. "Janice, Janice, is she okay?" "She's dead," he said, shaking her angrily. "No, she's not." I was ready to deny everything myself now. Their little girl was alive, but knocked out. She whimpered in her sleep. But the man went on shaking his wife. "Janice!" he hollered. His wife moaned. "She's not dead," I said, clambering from the car and running away. "She won't wake up," I heard him say. I was standing out here in the night with the baby, for some reason, in my arms. It must have still been raining, but I remember nothing about the weather. We'd collided with another car on what I now perceived was a 2-lane bridge. The water beneath us was invisible in the dark. This is where I'm going to end part 1.